Well, it is 6 o'clock and I will call the Missoula City Council meeting of July 26th, 2021 to order. This is a Zoom webinar this week, getting close to moving back into a hybrid format. We'll have some more news about that next week, but in the meantime, it will be business as usual. Attendees may raise their hands or use their phones to comment. And of course, council folks participating from wherever they're participating can follow those rules as well. We have all council members present this evening, except for we are missing Ms. Becerra, Ms. West, and Ms. Anderson. Moment. We have minutes of the meeting July 19th. Without objection, they'll be approved. Seeing no changes to those minutes, we'll schedule our community meeting. So that's right by.
Thanks, Mayor Engen. Can everybody hear me?
We can.
Okay, great. So we are setting up committee meetings for the coming 2 weeks. This is a bit unusual, but City Council will not be meeting on the 2nd of August. Normally, Council meets the first 4 Mondays of the month and takes the 5th Monday off, but there's this little thing called the budget. And so City Council this year will not be meeting the first Monday of August, and they will be meeting on the 5th Monday of August. So that's a long way of saying that there isn't a council meeting next week, and we're scheduling our committees for the following 2 weeks. So tomorrow, or on this coming Wednesday, the 28th of July, we'll be holding a committee of the whole meeting. Let me make that just a tiny bit bigger on screen, maybe not that big. There we go. So committee of the whole will be meeting from 12:35 to 1:45. I hope you can't hear those sirens, but if you can, I apologize. And budget committee of the whole will be meeting on the 28th from 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And then committee meetings will also be held on the 4th of August. Budget committee of the whole will start at 9 and go till 11. Public Works Committee will meet from 11:15 to 11:40. Parks and Conservation Committee meets from 11:55 to 12:15, and Committee of the Whole will round out the day from 12:30 to 1:30 in the afternoon.
Thank you, Ms. Rabine. Any changes to the committee schedule? Seeing none, I will note for the record that Ms. Anderson is here. Pardon me, we'll move on to the public comment portion of our agenda. This is your opportunity to comment on items elsewhere on the agenda this evening, and I would ask you to keep your remarks to about 3 minutes if possible. And Rabbi Franklin.
Hi, thank you and good evening. I'm going to use far less than 3 minutes because I have to go teach a class in a little bit, but I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank the City Council for putting forward a resolution regarding the Montana State Legislature's proposal, debate, and passage of HB 112 and HB 113 and HB 427. I think you've done the right thing to counter that damaging decision-making with a very beautiful resolution that is inclusive and supportive of Montana youth, their families, this whole community, and declaring support for transgender and all LGBTQ plus youth living within our community. And I'm just reading your words back to you, in fact, but what I do wish to say is I'm here to support it both as an individual, as clergy, and also to say that the movements of which I'm part, the religious movements that I'm part of, would support this 100%. So thank you for the opportunity, and I hope as it goes into final consideration, I urge you all to vote yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi. And Western Montana DSA.
Hi, Council, Mayor. This is Josh Decker. I'm sorry, my Zoom was not renamed. Resident of Ward 1. I'm calling to ask in advance of the budget season that the public received some clarity around last year's apparently scuttled Learn project that was put forward as an opportunity for the city to engage in a process of self-education about racial inequity and basic city practices as it concerns race and BIPOC community members. I'd just like to encourage City Council to give the public a detailed update of what happened to that 12-week process, the 12-week plan that was implemented in the midst of last year's budget cycle, and that we haven't heard much about since then. So I would encourage council to formulate some sort of statement on the Learn project and update the public on the Learn project in advance of the upcoming budget season. Thanks. Have a good evening.
Thanks, Mr. Decker. And Blaine Doherty.
Hi, Council. My name is Blaine Doherty. I live in Ward 3 in the Riverfront neighborhood. Yeah, I'm a volunteer for the Housing Advocate Network and have been a renter for 13 years. And I was just looking to talk really quickly about the process that myself and somebody I've been helping find housing has been. So basically, I have been helping my neighbor find housing for the past 3 months. She's 84 and on a fixed income. I should say she's also given me permission to share this story. She's also disabled. She grew up in Missoula and has lived the majority of her life here. She's an author, a painter, a teacher, and she's also a keeper of local history. And I'm happy to tell you that Nan finally has a new home, but clearly I'm mostly here to tell you how repulsively difficult it was to get Nan a new home. It took an entire year to get Nan into housing alive and well. It took herself, of course, myself, Tara, a social worker from St. Pat's, her friend Tim, many people at the Housing Advocates Network, a doctor, a psychologist, Missoula Housing Authority, and the list could go on. Usually I feel kind of good about the notion that it takes a village, but here it took a village to make sure that Nan didn't end up homeless or worse. And I should say that it took a village to house a woman that could pay the rent, but just couldn't pay didn't have 3 times the income a month. She has some student debt, and she does not have a friend wealthy enough to be a cosigner. I think these are simple, common things that I'm sure maybe potentially thousands of Missoulians live with and will be just fine with until they are forced to find new housing. Some of the, I want to mention some of the details of just like what Nan and myself and others have been through in this process. So fortunately, Tara, a social worker, got her signed up for Missoula Housing Authority in January, and that's what ended up coming through for us 6 months later. However, in the process, we were trying to work in the regular housing market. And as I mentioned, that requires 3 times the monthly rent, which my neighbor doesn't even touch. And to get around this, you can do a second or third deposit. But even if you were trying to find a 1-bedroom at $700, you would end up needing $1,400 to $2,100 just in deposit money alone to move in. And many rental companies don't even allow that. They just want a cosigner. And so I helped Nan look for housing almost every day, about 5 to 10 hours a week, depending on the difficulties and complexities of the paperwork mostly, for almost 3 months. And I can't overstate this enough, but the rental market in Missoula for renters right now is in a crisis state. And I'm saying this having been a renter in Seattle for 11 years, finding housing 5 different times. And I have never in my life experienced a wretched time of just finding a place to live. A few weeks ago, we went to an open house. And by the time we left 10 minutes after the opening time, there were easily 20 different parties looking at the same $600 unit. Almost done here. Sorry if I'm going over time. Given the situation, I want to say it's not surprising that up until last week when we found out Nan had won the lottery of subsidized housing and got a place, she was not doing well. She is depressed, but improving. She stopped alluding to suicide on a weekly basis. So what to do? I asked my neighbor what she needed, and she thinks that there should be centralization of some kind. It's just too complicated to find housing, especially when it's not on the regular market. She thinks we need rent control for the time being, and that the depth of the crisis must be understood, especially by non-renters. I should say it takes a level of administrative professional experience to navigate the housing work, which means that friends and family are probably not going to be able to help at this moment to the degree necessary. And in closing, thank you for your time. I just want to say that my hope is that the pandemic has taught us much about what we're capable of doing and must do during a crisis, even when we thought it impossible or unrealistic before. For Nan, myself, and pretty much everyone I volunteer with and they're working with, the housing situation has been a crisis for some time. And yeah, thank you for your time. And I appreciate all that you already are doing on housing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Blaine. Seeing no additional takers among our attendees, we'll move on to our consent agenda. Items there were approved generally unanimously in committees, and we save a little time by considering these items all at once on Monday nights. The council and I will ask comment before we vote. That's very fine.
Okay, can everybody hear me?
We can.
Okay, great. I switched to some headphones, so hopefully you won't have to listen to the sirens outside. So tonight's consent agenda, it looks like it has 7 items. My screen's over here, so I'm gonna not be looking like I'm looking at you, but I'm here. So the first item is to approve counts payable in the amount of $2,488,036.15 for checks that are dated tomorrow, July 27th, 2021. Number 2 is to approve a 3-year contract with Anderson Zermulin. They're the city's auditor, and we're contracting them for audit services in the amount of $283,500 over the course of the next 3 years. Number 3 is to confirm the mayor's appointment of Bill Schaff to the Building Code Board of Appeals as a master plumber for a term that begins, hang on just a second. Oh dear, it's going to take a minute. It begins immediately and expires on June 30th. Let me get a different agenda view here, because I think the consent agenda, well, we'll see. Takes a long time to read everything when I have to pull up the vote in the screen. The 4th item is to approve and authorize the mayor to sign a construction management general contractor agreement with Western Interstate. Hang on. Oh, content is still loading. To perform both pre-construction design services and construction management services for 133 West Broadway remodel project in the amount of $1,850 for the design. Plus for design services plus 10% will be added to the cost of materials, subcontractors, and labor to pay for margin, equipment, and overhead. Number 5 is to set a public hearing for August 16th of 2021 with final consideration on August 23rd, 2021 for resolutions on the fiscal year 2002 budget, capital improvement program, resolutions including certain fees, the permissive medical levy, and the work plans and budgets for the Downtown Business Improvement District, the Tourism Business Improvement, Park District number 1, and Road District number 1. Number number 6 is to confirm the mayor's reappointment of Sandy Mitchell to the City Board of Adjustment for a term beginning immediately and expiring on June 30th, and reappointment of Joseph Sukanic and Don Briggs to the City Board of Adjustment as regular members for terms that begin July 1st, 2021 and expiring Please wait while the content loads. Expiring on June 30th of 2024. And they're number 7. This is the last one, and it's great news. The council is being asked to ratify the mayor's execution of a grant award from Firehouse Public Safety Foundation for the requested Polaris Ranger XP 1000 North Star Crew Premium with Fire Rescue. I think it says skis and lights, valued at up to $34,578. This is a grant award that the fire department received that they've been applying for many years, and approve the memorandum of understanding for the purchase of that equipment from Grizzly Harley Davidson. And that agreement is in the same amount as the grant award, which is $34,578.
Thank you, Ms. Rabine. Questions or comments on the consent agenda? I'm sorry, Ms. Vasika.
Thanks. I'm going to separate 5.4, the remodel, the remodel agreement for the Broadway houses. I disagreed with the purchase of these buildings to begin with. So I spoke about it during committee meetings last week, so I will be voting no on that separately.
Pardon me, any further discussion? All right, seeing none. Anyone in the audience here comment? Seeing none there. Ms. Rabine will have a roll call vote on all but number 4.
Okay, on the consent agenda, except for number 4, Anderson,
Yes.
Contos,
Yes.
Harp,
Yes.
Hess,
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Jones votes yes. Merritt,
Yes.
Ramos,
Yes.
Cheryl,
Yes.
Vasika,
Yes.
and Von Lossberg.
Yes.
Okay, that is 10 ayes and 2 absent.
The remainder of the consent agenda.
Okay, this is item number 4. Contos,
No.
Harp,
Yes.
Hess,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Merritt,
Yes.
Ramos,
No.
Cheryl,
Yes.
Vasika,
No.
Von Lossberg,
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
And would any of you like to change your vote? That is 7 ayes, 3 nays, and 2 absent.
And the consent agenda is approved, and there were no hands in the audience. We don't have any reports from commissions, city staff, agencies, boards, community forum, or other authorities. We do have a couple of proclamations, and I'm going to get those cracked open here and read them real quick. first, ladies and gentlemen, is a proclamation. Whereas disability is a natural part of the human experience, and approximately 11.7% of the Missoula population lives with one or more disabilities. And whereas 31 years ago, the American with Disabilities Act, the ADA, for the first time, a comprehensive declaration of civil rights for disabled people, was adopted and became law on July 6th, 1996. And whereas the ADA has expanded opportunities for Americans living with disabilities and living with disabilities to participate in the mainstream of American life, to enjoy employment opportunities, to purchase goods and services, and to be treated as equal and valuable members of our society. And whereas we recognize that while barriers to equal opportunities may have improved for people living with disabilities since 1990, there has been much more work to do in that to ensure equal access to employment opportunities, the voting process, housing, health, and other issues associated with quality of life. Sorry, my screen is going a little bit crazy here. In addition to striving to reduce additional barriers, labels, and stigmas still too often used and inflicted upon disabled individuals, I therefore, John Engen, Mayor of the City of Missoula in the state of Montana, hereby recognize the 26th day of July as commemorate the 31st anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA, and would like to thank the dozens of hardworking people who make sacrifices of themselves and for many of the disability community advocates and policymakers who have worked tirelessly to ensure that people living with their disabilities have access to the same rights and opportunities as everyone else, and to dedicate ourselves to continuing their work for a more just, accessible, and inclusive community. That is one proclamation this evening. And I'm sorry.
Mr. Mayor, I know that Marty's having technical difficulties and you're on your phone, I would be happy to read the second proclamation, which I have up on my screen. I, for one, can't read anything on my phone.
That would be handy. Thank you.
Okay, I would love to use my broadcast announcer voice. So this is are we ready, or did you need comment or public comment on the prior one? Sorry.
Ready to go.
Okie dokie. Proclamation regarding Missoula National Light Night Out. I'll lower my hand. Whereas the National Association of Town Watch is sponsoring a nationwide crime prevention program on August 3rd, 2021, entitled National Night Out. And whereas the 38th Annual National Night Out provides an opportunity for law enforcement to build and enhance community relationships. A community is safer when you know your neighbors, your surroundings, and your law enforcement professionals. And whereas this is an opportunity for the citizens of the City of Missoula to be aware of the work that is being done on their behalf, the importance of crime prevention programs, the impact their participation can have on reducing crime, and to be aware of what the Missoula Police Department is doing to provide public safety. And whereas Missoula Police Department will be participating in and hosting the 38th National Night Out celebration on August 3rd, 2021 at City Hall, located at 435 Ryman Street, from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. in the evening. Now, therefore, I, John Engen, Mayor of the City of Missoula in the state of Montana, hereby recognize the third day of August 2021 as Missoula National Night Out, And I think that's all I read. And then you signed it.
Thank
All
you.
good.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. You made my life considerably easy. I don't know where my 15 pair of readers around here are this evening, so thank you for that. We have no additional special presentations this evening. We do have one public hearing, and state law and our own council rules set guidelines for inviting community comment in a formal way on a variety of issues. And following a staff report on each of these, the council will open a public hearing. Those public hearings will remain open until the next council's regular meeting, which would provide opportunity for additional comment after this evening, and then we'll take these items up at their next regular meeting. So our one public hearing this evening is on an ordinance to amend impact fee chapter 15.66 of Missoula Municipal Code. And I believe that Mr. Bickle has our staff report this evening.
Good evening, council members. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you, Dale.
I have a very brief PowerPoint presentation, so I will share my screen. And you are seeing my screen now?
We are.
So this is a simple cleanup of the our impact fee ordinance. The main change is to change the committee membership to conform with state law. When the original state law was founded for impact fees, the law required a certified public accountant. That was repealed several sessions ago, but that requirement still exists in the city's ordinance. In consultation with the Impact Fee Advisory Committee, they agreed that this requirement is overly onerous, and we have the longtime member who was a CPA, Jim Gallipole, is coming off the board. And while the committee felt that it wasn't necessary to have a CPA, they were interested in looking for someone with some government experience, finance experience. So this change simply strikes that language here in the ordinance. And then while we were updating this, we took a couple opportunities to clarify some other things in the ordinance. This is to strike the term development services throughout the ordinance. There's an example of that, and replace that with community planning, development, and innovation. And finally, it is to clarify that the impact fee methodology reports will be set by a resolution, like all of our other fees, rather than be listed specifically in the ordinance. Our last two methodology reports were adopted by resolution, and this clarifies that that will be the case in the ordinance. That is the very simple changes that we had, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Bickle. And I could get you to take the PowerPoint down for me, Dale. In the audience, I have no comment from the audience, but a number of council members would like to speak on this hard.
Thank you, Mayor. Dale, I do have one question, and I guess going back to why state law changed something around, I guess, the composition of the committee. What was the rationale behind recommending a CPA for an impact fee committee, knowing that there's a lot of numbers that are involved?
Thank you, Ms. Harp. The question is, why did the legislature start with that requirement, or why did they remove it?
Why did they remove it?
Oh, I think there was a lot of difficulty in other areas around the state where they couldn't actually, weren't able to recruit a certified public accountant to serve on the Impact Fee Advisory Committee.
Okay. Will the recommendation for our particular impact group or impact fee group still try and have somebody with that expertise?
Hopefully with some finance expertise, yes.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Seeing no other questions, this public hearing will remain open for a week. We don't have any additional this evening. We do have one item for final consideration. These items have had a public hearing and council will now make a decision with regard to these final consideration items. There is only one this evening. And this is a resolution in support of transgender and LGBTQ plus youth in Missoula. And I would entertain a motion.
That comes in committee of the whole, so I'll be happy to make the motion. The motion is to approve a resolution of the Missoula City Council regarding the 2021 Montana State Legislature's proposal, debate and passage of HB 112 and proposal and debate of HB 113 and HB 427, finding those actions to be ill-informed and damaging to Montana youth, their families, and their community, and declaring that the Missoula City Council supports transgender and all LGBTQ plus youth living within our community.
Motion is in order. Is there discussion on the motion? Ms. Jones.
Mr. Mayor, I was going to say, I know that people are here to comment, and I'm not sure if you wanted to take public comment prior to discussion, prior to debate on council, but I know that people are on the line wanting to comment, so.
I can certainly do that first. What we begin with Grace Decker.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, council members. My name is Grace Decker. I am a resident of Ward 1, and I have the privilege and honor of serving as a MCPS school board trustee since 2015. I just wanted to thank the council and the committee of the whole and the sponsors for bringing forward this resolution. It is very much echoes the sentiments behind MCPS's adoption of a strong policy, our policy number 3210 that protects all of our students from discrimination, including around issues of sex and gender. Our language says that educational opportunities will be available for all students without regard to race, color, national origin, sex, religion, creed, physical or mental disability, economic or social conditions, sexual orientation, gender identity, gender nonconformity, and actual or potential marital or parental status. It goes on to say that no student shall be denied equal access to programs, activities, services, or benefits on the basis of those. This policy was adopted by our board in 2015 with quite a bit of input and support from council, and MCPS stands by its policy. We are a district that believes in supporting all of our students, and it is very encouraging and reassuring to see City Council adopt a resolution that makes a similar stand in support of all of the kids who grow up in our community. We know that recognition and support of all kids helps prevent suicide and mental health problems, and we stand together with you as elected people supporting our community. Thank you for putting this resolution forward, and I urge you all to vote in support.
Thank you, Ms. Decker. I'm sorry, Tracy Ledyard.
Hi, am I being heard?
You are.
Hi, this is John Ledyard. I'm chiming in on, I guess, my wife's computer setup. But anyway, first of all, I want to thank you, Mr. Mayor, and the council, and Ms. Jones for asking me to chime in tonight. Kind of excited to take part. Secondly, I would like to echo what Grace Decker had just said. I completely agree with everything she said, wholeheartedly. So I've been working with kids my entire adult life. Both my two sons have graduated from Hellgate. My wife's been an employee there for quite a long time. I totally agree with the fact that I think you guys thought those bills were ill-informed and damaging. I don't think they're going to do anybody any favors in Montana. I get to work with all kids at Hellgate, and I get to try to make as many interactions with as many different kids as I can. The kids that fit into this transgender and LGBTQ+ community are kind, nice, non-threatening kids, and they deserve our support, just like all kids deserve our support. And they need to be reassured that Missoula is a welcoming and safe place for them to live. Thanks very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Ledyard. Zephyr.
Hi, hello. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, City Council. My name is Zoe Zephyr, chiming in again here. I'm President of Ward 4, and I am a trans woman. I'm a trans woman who testified at the legislature, spoke to the governor's office, and have talked to you all for the past few weeks. I want to keep my comments brief tonight and say that I chatted to you about what we hope Missoula will be. I chatted to you about the reality for a lot of trans people in Missoula today, that it is a place where harassment exists and where the actions of the state legislature have emboldened that harassment and deepened the levels to which people are willing to go to hurt me and my community. The importance of this resolution is a signal to the people in my community in Missoula and across the state. We have people who are leaving the state. We have people who are ending their lives. We have people who are terrified nonstop of what it means to be trans in Montana. This resolution is the first step in telling us what we want it to be like to be trans in Montana and in Missoula. And it is a promise we will make as we go forward to make Missoula better. I know there's work on a non-discrimination ordinance revision, and I know that there's work outside of city government as well to make our community safer. But tonight, by taking this action and voting to approve this resolution, you help us in my trans community believe for a second that we have something to hope for after what has been a very painful year. Thank you so much, and I urge you all to vote yes.
Thank you very much. Right, seeing no additional hands up in the audience, we have one hand up, and that's Ms. Merritt.
No, there is more comment, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, I'm sorry. Ms. McKnight.
Hi there, thank you, Mayor. This is Spider McKnight. I'm also a resident of Ward 4. I'm and a business owner here in town. And I too would like to speak in favor of this resolution. And I want to speak to a very specific argument that I anticipate will come up, having talked to some of you personally, and it's going to be about the element of fairness in sports. And I just want to reiterate, I've talked to some of you personally that, you know, I hear a lot of times, a couple weeks ago, we were talking about not legislating on what if this happens. I'd rather talk about what is happening. And I think we're also afraid enough that a trans athlete, some of the arguments I heard were that a trans athlete might have an advantage. I don't agree with that. But I also think that the what if somebody is a lot better than somebody else is very different than what is. And I think Zoe just spoke really wonderfully towards what is, and that what is that our kids are hurting, our trans kids are hurting, our trans kids need our support, our trans kids need to know that they belong. And for me, that is so much more important and vital for us as a community than the what if somebody might win a race that somebody else doesn't, which again, I don't think that any of the statistics show that that's actually happening. So I'm going to appeal to all of you again and say this is really, really important. And I'm going to say that in terms of fair, it's also not fair that some of us feel comfortable in the gender that we were assigned at birth and other people don't. And if we want to talk about fairness, let's really think about that. It's not really fair that some of you can legislate based on an experience that's not a lived experience for other people. So please keep all of that in mind and vote for this resolution. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Spider. And caller last four digits are 9039. Caller 9039. Hello, caller 9039.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can, yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. My name is Julie Johnson. I am a career public health nurse. I have worked with kids from newborns through adolescence, and I would strongly encourage you to support this, as I do not feel it is government's place to legislate this type of thing. These decisions should be left up to doctors and medical providers and parents. And as a community, I see our role as supporting kids to become decent human beings, whatever path they may take. So I thank you for your time, and that would be I would encourage you to support this.
Thank you. Great. See no hands up in the audience. Casimira.
Thank you. I want to thank all the folks who took the time to come and comment. We really appreciate your words and your intentions. And I want to thank Ms. Jones and Mr. Von Lossberg for bringing this forward. I will be fully in support of this resolution. I know it sadly does not change the laws that were passed at the state legislature this year, the very damaging bills that were passed. But it says to the people in Missoula that we support you no matter what your decisions are about your life. We support you. I think that the bills in the state legislature were built upon this ridiculous myth that there's some bright line test between boys and girls. And our biology the science of biology has evolved so much over time, and we know that that is simply no longer true. And as Spider said, it is unfair if people are forced to live a life that is not what they know is their truth. So I'm fully in support of this, and I hope that everyone else on council will be too.
Pardon me. Thank you, Ms. Merritt. Other hands up, Ms. Jones.
Thank you. I wanted to speak to this tonight, so I've got a few notes because I spearheaded this project of bringing this resolution. I think it's so important that we hear this. When House Bill 112, 113, and then eventually 427 came out in the legislature, I was appalled that, first of all, they would take an action to do this. And then I was also appalled that these were brought at the very get-go in January, which signaled that it was a clear priority for this legislature. So I disagree with these bills on so many levels, but I kind of wanted to focus my thoughts tonight on what I think the important points are that I want to make. I'm a parent of 3 kids, and to me, a community needs to take care of its people, and one of its biggest job is taking care of its kids, helping them grow up in an extremely complicated world. So these bills cut against that for me very deeply, and that's one of the main reasons why I thought it was so important to bring this. I know that it was extensively debated on the legislature floor, that especially regarding, I won't even go into the medical House Bill 113, which I thought was unbelievable that they would interfere in the private life of transgender youth and the doctor and their family and those relationships. And ultimately that did not pass, but the sports bill did pass, which bans transgender youth, specifically a male who's transitioning to a female from participating in interscholastic sports. And I know that one of the extensive arguments on the floor of the legislature was that it's not fair. It's not fair that someone play on a female team who possibly has any more muscle mass or somehow has an advantage. And I really wanted to address that tonight, because I think it's very important to see what the legislature truly has done with these bills, and especially the sports bill. If you talk to any educators or coaches or administrators in our schools, or read any studies, it is very apparent that kids who participate in extracurriculars, be it drama, music, journalism, whatever, and including sports, they tend to do better in school. They have better graduation rates, they have higher grades, higher test scores, less depression, better attendance, lesser statistics of using alcohol and drugs, and all in all, they're better engaged. So first of all, to ban someone from having an experience which would help them grow up and become a better person and figure out and develop their tools for how they're going to deal with life, to ban them from that is very, very damaging. And to me, that's the value of sports. I think when we talk about it not being fair, to me, that goes to winning, which it's really fun to win in sports. But if that's all you think sports are about, it's not. Sports are an extracurricular which helps someone belong to a community. It helps people learn how to work hard and develop a work ethic. You have the support of your surrounding teammates and coaches and parents. It builds your self-esteem. You learn how to overcome obstacles. And having raised 3 kids and who've all done a ton of sports, that's the value of this. The value is not in winning. That is just one teeny tiny piece of sports. So when I hear that it's not fair, I feel like that misses the point of what these extracurriculars are for. And to have cut this opportunity out for these kids is a really damaging, horrible thing to do. So that's why I thought on so many levels, a statement needed to be made tonight regarding these issues. And I hope that this passes, and I hope it passes unanimously tonight, because I think that's the statement that should be made in Missoula. And I'll just read the last section that I wrote in the resolution. I believe wholeheartedly that Montana's LGBTQ+ and transgender youth are entitled to respect, privacy, inclusion, safety, and security, and the City of Missoula supports these youth to help them thrive and reach their potential, which in turn enriches all of us and strengthens our community. I do believe that 100%, and I'm very much in favor of this and hope the rest of council is too.
Well, thank you, Ms. Jones and Mr. Hess.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to thank Ms. Jones for taking the lead on authoring and sponsoring this important resolution. And I'm really proud to co-sponsor it along with Mr. Van Lossberg. I want to say unequivocally that transgendered individuals are valued members of our community in Missoula, that they are supported and loved, and that this council will not sit idly as this legislature erodes the civil liberties of our transgender friends and neighbors, and that we need to do more, and that we will do more to support our trans community in Missoula. House Bills 112 and 113 and 427 are not from the Montana that I know and the Montana that I grew up in. The Montana that I grew up in valued individual privacy and individual dignity and safety. These actions by this legislature, which purportedly supports limited government, is government overreach of the most heinous kind, inserting government into the private lives and private medical decisions of a disadvantaged youth population. And it is unconscionable, and it is not the Montana that I know. This resolution reaffirms that the City of Missoula supports its transgendered citizens. This resolution is a statement of values, a statement that we believe that all people need to be treated with dignity. And in the coming months, I look forward to taking more actions on this. I look forward to updating our non-discrimination ordinance. And I look forward to being the Montana that I believe we can be. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hess. With that, seeing no additional comment. Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Cheryl.
Thanks. Like my colleagues so far, I support this resolution. While I understand it doesn't change legislative action at the statewide level, you know, as Zoe said, the signal, and I think it's a really important signal from this council. I'm thankful for Ms. Jones for leading it and my other colleagues for answering it. You know, this legislature's action, I feel, are an affront to human rights as well as a physician's ability to manage their patients. They're damaging a group of our youth that already struggles with depression. And I think this legislation it's mean, and I think it's immoral. I also want to say, as a mother of 2 female athletes, one that's in high school and one that's playing college, I fully support this resolution because, as Ben said, it is about way more than winning the game. You know, the NCAA back in 2010, and that's an organization that oversees a number of different sports, I think all the sports in college, and it's got about 1,000 different universities, you know, got input from their membership as well as subject matter experts, and they fully supported the inclusion of transgender athletes. I find it hard to stomach that our legislature decided without input of physicians or anywhere close to the level of research that the NCAA did, that they knew what was smart and what was a smart and an equitable policy on this. You know, I feel like my job sitting here on council is not to know everything, but to figure out who knows more about me than an issue that I'm deciding on and to talk to those people. I do not feel like our legislature did that at all. And I think this is a horrible disservice to the people of our state. And again, I agree with everything my colleagues have said, and I really appreciate everyone's support.
Thank you, Ms. Cheryl. Mr. Contos.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can you hear me?
We can.
Still trying to figure it all out. You know, I've given this a lot of thought. I've received a few phone calls from people expressing their views on this. And setting Christianity aside, you know, being a parent of 3 children, that's a major responsibility. All 3 of our children are adopted. That's not an easy process. But we've taken it very seriously. As many of you know, my wife is a school teacher. There are years where the child comes in as a boy, and the next year it comes in identifying itself as a girl. And, you know, my wife's okay with that because she says, you know, they need some time to figure this out for themselves. And I think even with our kids, you know, I have learned, of course, the first one, you make a lot of mistakes. The second and third, you kind of get a little bit better. And I've learned to just kind of let some things move without a lot of me interfering. And they do have a tendency to work themselves out. I think the thing that I take very seriously is, you know, children under the age of 18, they really don't have a full understanding of a lot of things. Their brains aren't fully developed. You know, you take a battle situation. You know, it's the 18-year-olds that are charging into war. Yippee-ki-yay, let's go get them, while the older folks are in the back, usually because of their rank. But it's that whole idea is they're not quite there yet. I think for a child or someone under 18 to make a decision to become the opposite sex through operations or surgeries or injections, that's for life. That's pretty big. Now, I think once they get to the age where they can make a decision on their own, after they viewed life a little bit better, I feel like that's all right. That's their call. But I think for people under 18, they're just not there yet. So I won't be in support of this, but those are my feelings. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Contos. And Mr. Rosberg.
Thanks. First off, I want to thank Council VP Gwen Jones for her work on this. And Jordan for co-sponsoring. We discussed this in sort of theory while the legislature was going on, and I really appreciate the work she did and reaching out to people in the community around the language. It's difficult to do, and I'm really appreciative. My colleague, Mr. Hess, mentioned how this was not representative of the Montana, he was born and raised in, and I think that there's a good segue there to be clear that this legislation didn't come from Montana at all. This is copycat legislation that is being driven by extreme right-wing organizations. You can reference reports from organizations like the Human Rights Network, and you can track the states that picked up this kind of legislation and copy it, and they try to jam it through legislatures with little input. And fortunately, there was a lot of input, but here in Montana, but it's still in several cases passed. But this was not asked for by Montana constituents, and it's disappointing to see this kind of copycat legislative work get pulled in and then tried to be jammed through without heeding the input of professionals. So I think that part's important. I want to recognize particularly, we've heard a lot of good comments from colleagues, and we've had a lot of important public comment from folks in the community. I want to particularly recognize Zoe Zephyr's comments, both in committee, at the beginning of the public hearing, tonight as well, and all through the legislative action, along with a lot of other folks as well. And that had to be incredibly difficult. And as Zoe pointed out, and others have pointed out, this resolution does identify necessary and important updates to our NDO, and as well as alluding to the better job that we can do in helping people navigate that process. And as others have said, we're committed to that. Quickly, on the fairness issue, others have touched on this. The fairness issue is an absolute red herring. This is legislation, as someone named Wyatt Ronan from the Human Rights Organization I referenced before says, this is an effort being driven by national far-right organizations attempting to sow fear and hate. And that is simply what this kind of legislation is about. It is about fear and hate with under the guise of some sort of fairness issue elsewhere, and it's a complete red herring. I think one of my constituents in Ward 1 put it the best. He wrote in and provided public comment, and he said, government at its best should uplift people, not use mean-spirited government overreach to discriminate against its own citizens. I couldn't agree with that sentiment more, and I'm very proud to support this.
That's terrific. And I have Ms. Vasika.
Thanks, and I do want to thank everyone who came to the meeting tonight to voice their stories and give their input on this resolution. What I first mentioned when this resolution first came up, that there were parts of it that I agree with and parts that I do disagree with. But first of all, I would like to say to all the members of the LGBTQ plus community, you are absolutely welcome here. I don't want any part of my words tonight to be misconstrued into thinking that any Montanan, any American is unwelcome. You all matter, and however you choose to live your life is up to you and up to you alone. I 100% support your individual right to choose how to live your life and how you choose to pursue happiness. With that being said, I do agree with the majority of this resolution. The decisions between a patient and their doctor is just that, the decisions between them and them alone. Unless a minor is involved, and then decisions between them are between the patient, the parents, and the doctor, and them alone. The government, I believe, has no business in interfering with those decisions. I also agree that equal educational and extracurricular activities should, and from my understanding, are available to all students. My only concern with this resolution is that by supporting it, we would be supporting biological males competing against biological females during athletic competitions. And I just can't support that. I have to stick up for the female athletes. In the resolution, it states that, quote, their ability to participate in legal extracurricular activities through their public educational institution is being refused on account of their sex, unquote. Participation is not being refused. That's just untruthful. They're not being banned. It just states that biological males have to compete with other biological males instead of the gender in which they identify as. And because schools are a public entity and are funded with our tax dollars, I do believe that the government has a right to make that rule. I have discussed this issue at length with colleagues, family members that I usually disagree with, community members, because I have an open mind about this and I don't come to this decision lightly. But I haven't heard an argument that has convinced me. And it really surprised me that friends and family that I usually disagree with actually did agree with me on this one issue. How you want to pursue happiness is up to you alone until it does infringe on the rights and opportunities of others. I mentioned earlier that I absolutely do support the equal opportunity, but what about the biological females that want to compete? Don't they deserve equal opportunity as well? All the progress that has been made to allow for women's rights and women's sports, what about that progress? Women had to fight for the right to vote, to wear pants, and to compete in sports. Until recently, women's sports wasn't even a thing. We didn't even get to compete in the Olympics until the 1920s. And now there are women athletes competing from all over the world in the Olympics today. I don't want to throw all that progress out the window. I don't want it to going back to being a man's world. So for that reason, respectfully, I am not going to be able to support this resolution tonight.
Okay, who am I missing at this moment? Ms. Anderson.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. Thanks so much to my colleagues. I should know better to go towards the end and speak after my eloquent colleagues, Ms. Jones, Mr. Von Lossberg, Ms. Sherrill, Mr. Hess, Ms. Merritt. I thank you for your comments tonight. And I think that we might be missing what the point of this resolution is. To me, this resolution is about basic humanity. And this resolution doesn't undo any of the bills that were passed during the legislative session, as horrendous as they were. This is just simply us here in Missoula saying, you know what? We see things differently. We see things as fair and equal. And if and we can't change the sports. That's not in our jurisdiction. This, the NCAA, as Ms. Sherrill pointed out, is the governing body of college sports, elite sports, and they have figured out how to handle this issue. The Montana State Legislature does not have any part in this, and we don't have any part in this either. This resolution is simply to say that after an awful legislative session where it was about hate and other, that is not something that we're going to stand for here in Missoula. We can't change the laws. We can't overturn them. We can't mandate how the school district allows for students to participate in sports, but we can say that we support our LGBTQ plus and transgender community, that we value them. I really appreciate Ms. Zephyr and the work. She has been at all of our meetings and she has spoken, and she is a young woman who just wants to go live her life, but yet she has to come before us, a legislative body, and ask for basic humanity. Her words that she spoke last week have really stuck with me, and I wrote them down. She said all she wants to be is safe, welcome, seen, and human. As Spider likes to talk about our lived experiences, I am a cisgender, heterosexual, white woman born at the latter part of the 21st century in Montana. I have a tremendous amount of privilege. I have never had to go ask for basic humanity to be seen for me and people like me. And that is the basis of this resolution, basic humanity, that we see you, we value you. And the fact that people in this community feel that they need to come and ask for that from a governing body, what is wrong with us? Why is that just not a given? So I will be in support of this. And I absolutely think that this resolution should be a unanimous vote, because this is just simply saying we see you, we hear you, we value you, and you are safe, you are welcome, you are seen, and you are human. Thanks so much.
Jesse, I saw your hand up. Jesse, why don't you go?
I apologize.
Oh, okay. Perfect. Thank you, Mr. President, Mr. Mayor. So I'll try and keep this as quickly as I can. I've spent a long time thinking about this and how I was going to vote tonight. And to me, it's really unfortunate that everything's kind of all lumped together in this resolution. And I understand that a lot of work went into it, and I'm not going to criticize from the back seat. But it's unfortunate because I actually agree with most of this resolution. I disagree with the nanny state on almost every level, especially some of the bills that did fail in the legislature. And I just want to make something more 100% clear, and I want you to read my lips. I support all LGBT youth living in this community. I acknowledge that transgender youth are a valued part of the community, and I value their voice in the community, and they are very, very welcome in this community. To me, I don't really have a dog in this fight. For one, I'm a man, and for two, and most importantly, I'm an awful athlete. I mean, I look like a giraffe on ice skates. I was never even in the running for a scholarship. It was never on the table for me. But I know many young ladies whose careers hinged on a level playing field in sports. I typically live by the mindset that I have a hard enough time paddling my own canoe without trying to paddle somebody else's, and I certainly agree with that tonight. And I believe that everyone's rights need to be protected from the government. But as Ms. Vasika stated, I don't think that playing in the sport that matches your birthing or your birth chromosomes is an infringement on rights at all. If this was a private school, again, I would not care at all. But because public schools are subjected to public policy, I think that we do have a say as elected officials in what goes on here. And I want the transgender community to know that they can reach out to me, and I'll fight just as hard for their rights as anybody else's. I do not see this as a discrimination at all. No one is saying, as Ms. Vasika said, that transgender youth cannot compete in sports. That is not even on the table, and if it was, of course I'd be opposed to that. That would be disgusting, and I'd be the loudest voice in the state legislature saying that was ridiculous and unconstitutional, but that's not what's happening here. I have no problem at all with trans boys participating in boy sports, so biological females that transition into boys, if they want to play in boy sports, go for it. I don't think there's any issues with that at all. But to me, there's way too much evidence to suggest that trans women competing in sports is unfair to young ladies. For example, in 2016, Craig Telfer ranked 200th in men's 400-meter hurdles. In 2017, he ranked 390th in men's 400-meter hurdles. In 2018, Craig transitioned to become Cece, and in 2019, she ranked first in women's 400-meter hurdles. I've listened to and read the comments about Laurel Hubbard, the first transgender athlete to compete in the Olympics, and the ladies that have worked their whole lives to compete, and they are very, very concerned about it. They're not transphobic, they're not any of that. They just think it's not fair, and in fact, it's not. Miss Hubbard is 43 years old, the oldest weightlifter by far in the Olympics, bar none, with either gender. And her next biggest competitor is only 21 years old. Why do you think that is? Even with the testosterone requirements, her levels are still 500% than the average female. So I'm just stating some of these facts using the science to tell you why I can't support this tonight. Having a level playing field is what sports is all built on. That's why we have gendered sports. That's why we have varsity, junior varsity. We have Class A, B, C, D. We have different age categories, first grade, second grade, eighth grade. We have college, we have NFL. We have all these different professional levels, all to level the playing field to make sure that everybody's really competing and doing their best in what is scientifically and biologically possible. So again, I consider myself of any anti-establishment movement, and that certainly includes the LGBTQ movement. I certainly support their rights, and I've long been a defender of the rights of the LGBTQ plus community, and still am today. This is anecdotal, but I'm a supporter of Caitlyn Jenner, and I actually hope she becomes the next governor of California. I think that would be phenomenal. And again, transgender males in boys sports, I have no issues with at all. My goal as a politician has always been to be irrelevant. I want to give all the power to the people, and the legislature and the governor were elected, in fact, by the people. I see myself as just a referee and just there to call balls and strikes and foul balls. And I see this, unfortunately, as a foul ball only in the sense with transgender boys competing, transgender girls competing in women's sports. If we had this vote even 10 years ago, I'm guessing that it would have been unanimous in keeping women's sports for biological women. The fact that it's changed so quickly has just been bizarre for me to even see. But I was very on the fence about this until I spoke to dozens of female athletes that I know, mostly Democrats actually, who told me that they believe it's unfair to have biological transgender females competing in women's sports, but they're literally afraid to say anything. They're afraid of being harassed, bullied, and subsequently beaten into submission. And I believe that I was elected to give a voice to those folks that feel like they can't speak their mind. Again, all of this being lumped together is why I'm voting against it, and it's simply to protect women's sports. I reiterate, I believe the trans community is a valued part of the community, and I will fight for their rights as hard as anybody else's, but I'm not in support of this simply to protect women's sports. I agree 1,000,000% that Montana's LGBTQ plus youth are entitled to respect, privacy, inclusion, safety, and security. The city of Missoula supports these youth to help them thrive and reach their potential, which in turn enriches all of us and strengthens our community. Just want everybody to know that is truly what I believe. And unfortunately, I think that because of my vote, I'm going to be labeled as this racist, transphobic, bigoted piece of crap. Well, that's not the issue at all. But I know that the left can be brutal when it comes to this stuff, so I'm prepared for it. But just so people know, just to set the record straight, I support 100% the trans community. I support transgender males competing in boys sports. I just can't get over the fairness issue. And I've spoken to many constituents on the opposite side of the aisle, young ladies that are afraid to speak out against this. So I'm voting no in support of them and in support of women's sports. So thank you for listening. This is a lot longer than I anticipated, but it's very important to me to make my position clear. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ramos and Ms. Hart.
Thanks, everybody. I really appreciate all of my colleagues' comments tonight. I think it underscores that all of you have taken the time to really think about this and how it affects you and your family and this community. And how it elicited a fear in me because I didn't know what to expect coming from that person. And I, over time, came to realize that they were just trying to fit in their own unique way. I have been an athlete all of my life. I started playing kickball, moved up to field hockey, moved into basketball, volleyball, track and field, softball, soccer, and as an adult, I play hockey. Hockey is a sport that traditionally has been very tough. And I kind of didn't want to actually get involved in the sport for a long period of time because of stigma. But over the last 15 years, I have played this wonderful sport, and it's given me incredible joy, as all of you know, because I have been welcomed as a female on a team, both on my women's only team, but also on a team that is composed only of men. And I am the sole woman on it. That means I share a locker room with both men and women. Sometimes those men are gay, sometimes the women are lesbians, sometimes they're who knows what. It's none of my business to keep them off of the ice.
I am a biological female, and I play on a team with biological men all the time, and I compete against them all the time. Over the course of my experience as an athlete, I feel that I have learned some really amazing things, and I think all of us realize that sport teaches us tremendous lessons in life. One is resilience. Another is just a healthy dose of competition, conflict resolution. I think we all can value that today, and what it means to be a good sport. But by and large, the most important thing that I teach my daughters as athletes and the teams that they play on is that in order to be a good leader, you first have to learn how to follow. And that is best taught in sports. And sports are often celebrated at the high school level, and then at the collegiate level, of course, and for men in particular, the professional level, and less so for women. But by and large, there's a vast majority of Americans who play co-rec sports. And that has to be, in my opinion, open to everybody, no matter how they identify their sexual orientation. Discrimination against who gets to be an athlete shortchanges our future leadership. And transgender folk benefit just as you and I do when we feel welcomed and loved and free to become the person we are yet becoming. I urge my colleagues, for those of you who thought you agreed with the vast majority of this resolution, to find heart in that vast majority of the resolution. And I know nothing is ever perfect, but this is a resolution that I believe we can all stand behind, at least 51% of it. So please, please vote.
I believe you're muted, Mr. Mayor.
You're muted, Mayor.
I apologize. Seeing no additional comment, we'll have a roll call vote on the motion.
Okay, on the resolution, we'll start this round with Harp.
It's a hell yes.
Hess.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Merritt.
Yes.
Ramos.
No.
Cheryl.
Yes.
Vasika.
No.
Von Lossberg.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
And Contos.
No.
And would any of you like to change your vote? That is 7 ayes, 3 nays, and 2 absent.
And the resolution is approved. We'll move on to communications from the mayor. I will simply apologize. I have had a very long day, and it's very warm in my office right now, and I was nodding off a little bit. I apologize for that. That's not what you all deserve from me. I'm more awake now, so with any luck, I won't fade away again. Summer and smoke come together, I'm afraid. We'll begin general comments from city council members with Ms. Hart.
Thank you, Mayor. I noticed the dozing, so I'm glad you're awake. Just want to let folks know we have our Missoula County Fair starting the week of August 9th. I make it the 10th, sorry. And I heard a little rumor that our Missoula Water is going to be doing a taste test and putting our Missoula Water up against potential competitors. So I don't know if it's going to come to fruition or not, but hopefully, cross your fingers, we got a little something going on there.
Mr. Ramos.
Pass. Pass. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And Ms. Anderson.
I will pass as well. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Ms. Merritt.
Thanks. I just will remind folks again, since we had the proclamation about the Americans with Disabilities Act celebrating its 31st anniversary, the Out to Lunch on Wednesday is in part a celebration of the ADA. And I hope that everyone can come and join us and also support our downtown association. Thanks.
Mr. Hess.
I'll pass. Thanks, Mayor.
Ms. Jones.
I'll pass. Thank you.
Mr. Contos.
I'll pass. Thank you.
Mr. Von Osberg.
Pass.
Ms. Cheryl.
I'm going to pass as well. Thank you.
And Ms. Vasika.
I'll pass as well. Thank you.
All right. Having no additional comments from council members, we have no committee reports this evening, nor do we have any items of new business. Are there any additional items to be referred? Seeing none of those, any miscellaneous communications reports, petitions, or announcements? Seeing none, as always, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for your service, and we will be adjourned.